Welcome to another edition of the Business Plain and Simple podcast presented by the ReGroup Advisors. I'm your host, Tiffany Stone, and it's our goal with this and all of our podcasts to guide prospective and current business owners on their journey to prosperity. We'll show you what to do and what not to do in this ever-changing environment. I'm thrilled to be joined today by Michael LePire from CoStaff Services and Mike Kaszubski from the ReGroup Advisors. Welcome, gentlemen. Now, off to you, Mike. We always chat. And I love all of your great ideas about everything and bringing everything together. So can you tell me about the strategic relationship and how it is helping clients expand?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks, Michael, for jumping on with us today, too. It felt it important to really talk through this. ReGroup and CoStaff had formed a relationship a while back, and we had recognized that with a lot of our clients, continuing to deal with labor and rising costs with health insurance, and then even growing, that one of the stress points is always, how do I handle the employees and what do I do on that side? And we've known CoStaff for several years, high reputation in the marketplace, and we felt that it was time for us to align ourselves with somebody that could help our clients maintain that level of service and that quality that we like to give as well. And so we started to pursue it, and Michael and I had met as our teams to determine, how that would look and what we could offer to the clients to help them out. And here we are. So, it's I never do it any justice talking about, somebody's business. So, I appreciate Michael jumping on. He can really kind of talk through what they do and why they do it, and then I'll kind of later on explain, exactly how it's been working.
Wonderful. Well, Michael, we love to hear about businesses and everything that is going on with them. I even learn a lot when I talk to everybody, so I'm super thankful for this. So, Michael, going into your business, what are you seeing as challenges to businesses you work with, and exactly what does your company do?
Well, that's a lot to unpack there, I suppose. In the broadest sense, what we do is we're a single vendor solution for all things HR. If you think about it from the terms of, probably the best way to illustrate it is like an entrepreneur. Let's say that you have a new service, or you have an expertise, or maybe something different in the market in which you've had history, and you've decided you want to put your shingle out. Well, the moment that you hire that first employee, your life changes. And now you have to go out and find a way to pay them. So maybe you get a payroll company, and then maybe that same company or a different company will manage your taxes. And then, now you're required to get workers' comp. So now you have a P&C broker as well. Oh, and I want to attract the best talent. So I now have to go out and find benefits, which may be a benefit broker, and it may be an ancillary benefit broker, and disability, and AFLAC, and FSA provider, and a 401k provider, and the list goes on and on. And before you know it, you're managing double-digit relationships with disparate systems that don't talk to each other. Our solution kind of flips that on the ear to say, we want to do all of that with one vendor that has a global perspective of the organization, that can layer in best practices to streamline processes and insulate from risk, and also deliver an HRS solution so that you can really automate all of those necessary administrative tasks in one single sign-on, paperless, integrated environment where the employees can drive a lot of their own HR, and therefore we can spend your valuable time and our time really concentrating on the things that insulate your company from risk and make it more valuable in the long run.
Michael, you were not kidding. That was a loaded question that I gave you, and I really enjoy, going through all of it. It's because in the beginning you have this, like you were talking about, and then you need to add this, and then you add this, and then you add that, and for most people, as somebody that's even on the other side, I didn't know that you needed to have all of these things. I'm a person that works for themselves. And is there any size limitations for businesses to use this model as a tool, or can somebody that is their self-employed use it, or do they need to have, 5 employees underneath them?
That's an interesting question, and I think it can be answered in a lot of different ways. And it really kind of depends on what the situation that particular company is in. If you think about it from the perspective of the industry average, if you look at our national association, they say the average size company that's in this model is 23 employees. When I first started in this business, back in 2000, a 50 employee company was a huge win. Today, that's commonplace. And I think that's primarily for two reasons. One is the technology is far more sophisticated. So it's far more integrated, can provide a number of different services or business processes all in one platform. And so it's accessible to bigger companies than it historically has been. But I also think too is companies are really embraced outsourcing non-revenue generating processes. And so, as I said, they're looking for more efficient ways to do business and more ways in which they can regain time back to they can concentrate on really working on the business instead of being stuck working in the business. And you asked me a moment ago, what do I hear most? One of those things is time. You have to almost look at it, take a step back and look at it from the perspective of your employees. For most companies, your largest capital expense are your employees. And most companies don't look at that as a capital expense. It's kind of a necessary evil. But it really should be looked at in terms of any other large capital expense. You have an acquisition cost, you have a maintenance cost for an expected ROI. Your people are no different. You have to find the best people, you onboard them, you develop them so they can be more important to the organization to increase productivity and eventual growth. And most at least leaders, small company leaders that I work with, don't look at it in those terms. Yet it's those employees that really offer you your greatest asset. And if you break it all down to brass tacks, I don't care if you're running a piece of software, if you're creating a widget, delivering a service, manufacturing a piece of capital equipment, you break it down, you're betting that your people are better than your competitors' people. So the question is what are you doing to really bring the best talent in place, create a dynamic environment for them to work, give them all the services and goods and support that they would have with a large enterprise company to become a destination employer so they stay with you and help you perpetuate the success of the company. So
I really like that. That's really cool.
Yeah, and so you have to look at it from, it's improving that, it's regaining time through increasing business efficiencies. And I think lastly, you have to look at insulating the business from risk. And most small companies, even medium-sized companies, don't have the resources or the expertise in-house to be able to protect the company, protect this baby that they've built. Really try to, and if they're looking for investment, to protect the investment of their investor, their financial partner, the ReGroups of the world. So because it is when you do that diligence to find more money, or your investment partner is looking for their exit, and they're doing that, potential buyers doing diligence, that's when the skeletons come out, and that's what puts your organization at risk. So those are the three things that I hear kind of going back to the first question. It's how do I find the best people? How do I regain time, and how do I insulate the company from this?
Well, Michael, talking about that, moving forward to the future, 2023 is kind of almost done, and we're getting into this space of AI. Is your company going to be able to accommodate those things? A lot of people are looking at that. Is that something that your company is going to be able to do moving forward? Because like you said, with technology, it's a one-stop shop. Is this something that we're going to be able to see?
Absolutely. I mean, just like COVID, that changed the business environment here in the US. These types of new technologies are always going to be disruptive. And our role is to look at best practices, look for guidance from the federal government, and put in place those policies and procedures to be able to either maximize those tools or making sure that the employees and how they interact with those tools really are productive and insulated from any potential risks that they might deliver to the organization or to the individual employees.
Wonderful. Well, I'm going to head over to Mike now. So Mike, do you see this tool as a necessity for businesses to consider incorporating moving forward, or how are your thoughts on all of this?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, one of the driving factors of us forming this relationship and looking is, Mike kind of referenced that there's a lot of risk, right? And coming out of the last, 6-7 years, a lot of deals have been getting done, and people have been either looking to exit, or there's been a lot of roll-ups going on where people are kind of integrating into another platform. And one of the challenges is in today's world, your labor force is all over the place. It's no longer, I'm recruiting just in a particular state. So almost every one of our clients over the last, call it 5 years, if I wanted to be conservative, had started to recruit talent from other areas. And what gets complicated is, if you're in Ohio and you're recruiting, you understand how Ohio taxes and everything works. When you start having employees in California and Texas and Arizona and Florida, you're attracting the right talent for your business in today's world, but now you've just overly complicated everything. Everything from how you onboard somebody to how the interviews go to how the assessments goes. If you're tracking credentials and licensure and educate, like there's just so much stuff. I don't know why anyone ever, to all those HR people, I got to give you kudos, because I don't know why you'd ever pick that career. I think about it and I just go, wow, yeah, that was a deviation at Albuquerque there. But with that said, we're private equity. We look at assessments, and when we're building models and we want to make sure that there's something that we can do with that model at a later point in time, CoStaff is almost right at the front end of how do we build this model for scaling up. How do we build this model to go to multi-state? How do we build this model to actually incorporate into a bigger platform? Because you're not going to sell to somebody your size. You're selling to somebody that's bigger than you. And if they're bigger than you, typically they're in different territories. I mean, even here in the state of Michigan, you have the west side of the state is different from, Metro Detroit. A lot of differences there, and people don't actually realize that. And you start adding local taxes, and it just gets very complicated. And the human element is an integral part, and being able to actually understand how that plays into the organization is like I said, that's in every deal that we've done. I can't think of a company that we haven't scaled up in even this year. We have 30 companies we're working with. None of them are able to scale up to where they're at without this solution being in there. And if you don't know about it, you probably need to kind of start to look at it.
No, you're absolutely correct. I mean, we're talking about different states. I'm over here in Arizona. We've got Michigan. So things change so differently. And as a person who works in multiple different states and talking about what Mike and Michael have said, it's difficult at times because, am I paying California taxes? Am I paying Arizona taxes? What about this one? Do I have an exempt here? How does all of that work? And, I'm just myself, but I couldn't imagine if you said, Michael, 23 employees is the normal median number that you're going to have. You're going to have all of these people from different places. So one last thing, kind of to wrap everything up, Michael, for somebody who really wants to work with CoStaff services and really get into that, what's the main thing that they need to have all that information before they approach you and was like, hey, we really need your help?
Well, really, it's a really good question. And because our solution is so broad, gaining all the necessary information that we need to do an analysis and underwriting and whatnot can be, a little laborious. So I would really say, let's have a conversation to understand what drives success. What does success mean for you? Where have you been? Where are you going? And what challenges are you having before we go down that path? Because I want to understand you as an organization and see if I can even help you. We're not a solution for everyone. So let's really understand what are the drivers behind the business and what success looks like before I'm going to send you down a path of gathering a bunch of information that may be a waste of time for us both.
Wonderful. Well, you're absolutely correct. If somebody does want to reach out to you, where can they reach out to you, Michael?
Well, certainly they can reach out to me directly. My address, my email address is LePire at CoStaff Services. Certainly, you can contact us via our website, or frankly, our friends at ReGroup, and contact them, and they'll connect us directly. And sometimes they may even sit in on the conversation to help them better support the companies that they're consulting with.
Wonderful. And Mike, any last words or anything about Michael and CoStaff Services?
No, it's great. It's like I said, we've known them for years now. We just kind of really started to really formalize a direct approach, especially to match this rising expansion that everybody's doing. And I'll tell you, they make our job a lot easier, and they definitely, you can see the stress leave the client's face immediately. A lot of times we'll get asked why, I wish we would have done this, 5 years ago when we started the business. So, it's kind of funny, their expansion plan is resetting the table, but yeah, no, absolutely great. I would encourage people that if you're growing, this should be one of the first things you research out. Give us a call or give Mike a call and definitely explore it and see if it can help you out.
Wonderful. Well, you're absolutely correct. Sometimes the best choice is leaving it to the professionals for things that you don't necessarily know. Makes it a little bit easier. Michael, I see that smile because you know that is true. It's just sometimes we don't know everything. We'd like to think that we know everything, but we certainly don't. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me today and providing some great information. And that's going to do it for another edition of the Business Plain and Simple podcast presented by the ReGroup Advisors. Thank you so much for listening, and make sure to follow our podcast wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss a future episode. You'll be notified as soon as they are released. And if you want to catch up on past episodes, don't worry. You can definitely do that and see those podcasts in our feed as well. If you're interested in business advising services offered by the ReGroup Advisors, you can contact them at 888-248-7077.